Hey guys, welcome to the Massive Iron Channel. I'm Steve Shaw. In this video, I'm going to talk about Menno Henselmans. Henselmans, his last name has an S at the end, and the optimal amount of volume for building muscle. Before I get into that topic, if you have any questions or comments, drop them down below. The best topic ideas I turn into videos just like this. Optimal training volume. You hear me speaking all the time about using a reasonable amount of training volume. So we're going to dive into some of the research. We're going to dive in. I got this from an article on Menno Henselmans' page. We're going to talk about the research he presents, and then I'm going to share some things for you guys to think about. So let's dig into the nuts and bolts. I got my computer right over here. I'm going to read some studies, some information. We're going to talk about optimal training volume. Hopefully help you guys build more muscle mass, give you some things to think about. All right, so two studies by Barbalho et al., 2018-2019, find that when training a muscle only once per week and trying to train to true momentary muscle failure, the optimal training volume is only 5 to 10 sets per week. 5 to 10 sets per week. Groups doing 15 to 20 sets per week achieved worse muscle and strength gains. Now, we're not really, you need to understand, you need to look at these things and filter them a little bit, process them in a rational manner. When we see sentences like achieved worse muscle and strength gains, we tend to panic. We tend to really panic, but we need to understand as rational human beings that worse could mean 1% worse, it could mean 5% worse. We don't know the exercise selection, etc. But we tend to think when we hear worse that the gains from 5 to 10 sets are way up here and the gains from 15 to 20 sets are way down here. We think there's a big gulf, a big gap between gains. In reality, scientifically, there's usually not. I don't know it because I'm not looking at it, but I do know that the gulf or the gap between 5 to 10 sets and 15 and 20 sets is probably not as big as we think. Let me turn down the volume on my computer here. All right, the second study is, let me see if I can pronounce this name, Amir Thalengam et al., 2017 German volume training study showed better gains in strength and size with 5 instead of 10 sets of their primary exercise per workout. Primary exercise per workout, okay? So they're doing, this is a study on German volume training. They're not talking about overall volume, and this is something I actually wrote an article on previously, that German volume training, it looks like 5 sets of 10 is much better than 10 sets of 10. You can check out this my article over at tigerfitness.com. The total set volume per workout was around 9 in the medium volume group compared to 14 in the high volume group. So they're not saying necessarily that 5 sets is the way to go, but with German volume training and the primary movement, it was better off just doing 5 sets of 10 compared to 10 sets of 10. And this is why I structure and personally do a lot of 5 by 10 on lighter movements. After my barbell rows are done, after my dumbbell rows are done, I generally do 4 to 5 sets of lat pull downs, 4 to 5 sets of seated cable rows, things like that. This is why, because it's a little bit better doing that. And plus, when you look at things like overuse injuries, you don't want to do a lot of volume on the same movement pattern over and over again. It's better to do a little less volume. But the end result of the study was that overall set volume was around 9 in the medium volume group and 14 in the high volume group. All right, last study is Henselmans et al., 2019, found a trend for optimal training volume of 18 sets per week per biceps. Groups training with 9 to 27 sets achieved worse overall strength and muscle development. The medium and high volume groups trained their biceps twice per week, and the high volume group performed 13 to 14 sets per workout compared to the 9 in the medium group. So the Henselmans found that those with 9 and 27, so a lower volume and a higher volume, achieve worse results than 18 sets per week. So we have some conflicting information here. We have some folks saying optimal training volume is 5 to 10 sets per week. Some saying 18 sets per week. And obviously, scientifically, there's going to be a lot of variables here. I believe Menno Henselman went on to recommend 9 per 13 sets per week. And, that's not a bad range overall for the average lifter for muscle growth. But I'm going to give you my opinion because I speak a lot on reasonable training volume. When I talk about how to build muscle mass, I talk about have a quality exercise selection, a reasonable focus on progressive overload, or an intelligent focus on progressive overload, and a reasonable volume and patience. So reasonable volume, people always ask me, what is a reasonable volume? So I'm going to give you 4 things to think about. First off, volume is not the only variable in training. Volume is not the only thing that drives muscle growth. So while we're focused on volume in this video, we have to understand that there are other things that matter other than volume. Obviously, progressive overload, or getting a lot stronger than you are now over time. And another factor which I talk about a lot and in focus upon in my book Massive Iron is making sets count, pushing a set to the limit, pushing a set to the safe limit, taking a set for as many reps as possible, stopping that set when you feel like you might fail on the next rep or when you feel like your form starts to break down. If you notice in a set of like 10 reps, the first few feel easy, and then they progressively get more difficult. What's happening here is you're recruiting a maximal amount of muscle fibers. The further into a set you get, the more muscle fibers you're getting, the more intense, or the more intensity is being placed on that muscle. When you're doing lower rep sets, like 5 rep sets, the body tends to recruit a maximum amount of muscle fibers out of the gate, but that doesn't make it inherently better for hypertrophy. There's a good argument for mixing up, for doing those 5 rep sets, and then for doing your volume, and then for doing pump work, because pump work can contribute to muscle growth as well. There's some science that shows that maybe the last 5 to 10% of your work being pump work might have value for the muscle building process. So volume is not the only variable that builds muscle. So when we're looking at optimal volume for building muscle, we have to remember that. Now, second, and this is an important thing when it comes to anything in life. Sometimes we seek the minimal quality amount that we can do for results, when in reality, it's probably better to do a little bit more. It's probably better to do a little bit more volume rather than a little bit less volume. It's just rational, reasonable makes good quality sense. So when someone like Menno Henselmans recommends 9 to 13 sets for major muscle groups or whatever, it's probably better to do a little bit more. I generally recommend, probably 12 to 15 sets for major muscle groups. That's been kind of the sweet spot for the aging lifter or for the injured lifter. I've been known to recommend 9 to 12 sets as well, and some of my workouts are focus on 9 to 12 sets. So you could probably make really good progress with 9 to 12 sets on major muscle groups, but it makes sense to consider maybe doing a little bit more, maybe 12 to 15 sets per major muscle group. Now, when we consider volume, you're going to ask me, how we train impact volume? Full body work, upper lower splits or AB splits, bro splits, and not getting into that debate. But one thing you always need to consider when you're looking at volume is framing it in the context of weekly volume. So if we're talking about 9 to 13 sets, as Menno Henselmans talks about, or my recommendation to do a little bit more, maybe 12 to 15, that needs to be the weekly volume regardless of how you train. So if you're doing a body part split, 12 to 15 sets. If you're doing an AB or upper lower split, and you're looking at chest, 12 to 15 sets broken up in how many times you work out that week. If you're doing a full body workout and working out 3 times a week, then you're looking at like 4 to 5 sets per day, full body. And you can go in and do 3 sets of bench press and maybe finish off at the end of your workout with 2 sets of as many reps as possible push-ups. That's one way to easily get in 5 sets per workout, 4 to 5 sets per workout. So again, the final point, what is a reasonable volume? A reasonable volume is probably somewhere in the 12 to 15 range, a little bit higher than what Menno Henselman recommends. There's going to be people that will jump on here and talk about how they achieved really good results with low volume, really good results with high volume. That is highly possible, and I'm not discounting that at all. I'm just trying to give a best possible course for most people. At the end of the day, what we need to remember is that as long as we are getting a lot stronger than we are now, as long as we are using a reasonable exercise selection, all these debates and all these discussions are kind of neutralized over the course of 4 to 5 to 6 years. Because if you are getting a lot stronger than you are and using a good exercise selection and you're progressing, it's not going to really matter how you split up your workouts. And that sounds controversial to some. It's not going to really matter potentially if you go a little bit lighter volume rather than a little bit heavier volume. Consistency and getting a lot stronger than you are now are really the keys. With that said, I would recommend a little bit more volume rather than a little bit less volume. Maybe adding a little pump work at the end of your workouts, a little finisher work at the end of your workouts, because that has been shown scientifically to have some potential value. And I think it's a really good way, one of the best ways to build muscle is to get some lower rep, 5 to 6 rep sets in your plan, maybe 5 to 8 rep sets in your plan with compound movements, then back that with some volume on some less intense exercises, like, say you're starting off with barbell or deadlifts. You could do some more volume with your dumbbell or barbell rows and more volume with your seated cable rows and pull-ups or lat pull-downs, and maybe do a finisher. And taking one or more of those sets for each exercise close to failure, not to failure, but close to failure, has some value as well. So guys, hope this video has been of some help. If you have any questions or comments, drop them down below. If you made it this far in this video and have yet to subscribe to my channel, please do. I'd appreciate the support. So guys, as always, thanks for watching. Have a great day.